Welcome friends. Today I am going to talk on the concept of ecosystem, introduction of laws of limiting factors. An ecosystem consists of the biological community that occurs in some local and the physical and chemical factors that make up its non-living or abiotic environment. There are many examples of ecosystems such as a pond, a forest, an estuary, grassland and many more. The boundaries are not fixed in any objective way, although sometimes they seem obvious as within the shoreline of a small pond. Usually, the boundaries of an ecosystem are chosen for practical reasons having to do with the goals of particular study. Energy, water, nitrogen and soil minerals are other essential abiotic components of an ecosystem. The energy that flows through the ecosystem is obtained primarily from the sun. It generally enters the system through photosynthesis, a process that also captures carbon from the atmosphere. By feeding on plants and on one another, animals play an important role in the movement of matter and energy through the system. They also influence the quantity of plant and microbial biomass present. By breaking down dead organic matter, decomposers release carbon back to the atmosphere and facilitate nutrient cycling by converting nutrients stored in dead biomass back to a form that can be readily used by plants and other microbes. The study of ecosystems mainly consists of the study of certain processes that link the living or biotic components to the non-living or abiotic components. Energy transformations and biogeochemical cycling are the main processes that comprise the field of ecosystem ecology. As we learned earlier, ecology generally is defined as the interactions of organisms with one another and with the environment in which they occur. We can study ecology at the level of the individual, the population, the community and the ecosystem. Studies of individuals are concerned mostly about physiology, reproduction, development or behavior, and studies of populations usually focus on the habitat and resources needs of individual species, their group behaviors, population growth and what limits their abundance or causes extinction. Studies of communities examine how population of many species interact with one another, such as predators and their prey, or competitors that share common needs or resources. Ecosystems are controlled both by external as well internal factors. External factors such as climate, the parental material which forms the soil and topography control the overall structure of an ecosystem and the way things work within it, but are not themselves influenced by the ecosystem. Biodiversity affects ecosystem function as do the processes of disturbance and succession. Ecosystems provide a variety of goods and services upon which people depend. The principles of ecosystem management suggest that rather than managing individual species, natural resources should be managed at the level of the ecosystem itself. Now we will see the types of ecosystem. An ecosystem can be natural or artificial, temporary or permanent, and large or tiny. Thus, constituent ecosystems of the biosphere fall into the following categories. First is natural ecosystems. These types of ecosystems operate by themselves without any major interference by man. They are classified as terrestrial ecosystems such as forest, grassland, deserts, etc. Second is aquatic ecosystems, which may further distinguished as freshwater ecosystem. This may be lotic, means running water as spring, brook, stream or river, or lentic means standing water as lake, pond, pool, puddle, ditch, swamp, etc. Second is marine ecosystem. These include saltwater bodies which may be deep bodies as an ocean or shallow ones as a sea or estuary. Second one is artificial ecosystem. These are also called man-made or man-engineered ecosystems. These are maintained artificial by man where by addition of energy and planned manipulations nature balance is disturbed regularly. For example, croplands such as sugarcane, maize, wheat, rice fields, orchards, gardens, villages, cities, dams and aquarium. Coming to processes of ecosystems. Ecosystems have energy flow and ecosystem cycle materials. These two processes are linked but they are not quite the same. Energy enters the biological system as a light energy or photons, is transformed into chemical energy in organic molecule by cellular processes including photosynthesis and respiration, and ultimately is converted to heat energy. This energy is dissipated, meaning it is lost to the system as heat. Once it is lost, it cannot be recycled. Without the continued input of solar energy, biological systems would quickly shut down. Thus, the earth is an open system with respect to energy. Elements such as carbon, nitrogen or phosphorus enter living organisms in a variety of ways. Plants obtain elements from the surrounding atmosphere, water or soils. Animals may also obtain elements directly from the physical environment, but usually they obtain these mainly as a consequences of consuming other organisms. These materials are transformed biochemically within the bodies of organisms, but sooner or later, due to excretion or decompositions, they are returned to an inorganic state. Often, bacteria complete this process through the process called decompositions or mineralization. During decomposition, these materials are not destroyed or lost, so the earth is closed system with respect to elements. The elements are cycled endlessly between their biotic and abiotic states within an ecosystem. Those elements whose supply tends to limit biological activity are called nutrients. The other vital element of ecosystem is the transformation of energy. The transformation of energy in an ecosystem begin first with the input of energy from the sun. Energy from the sun is captured by the process of photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide is combined with the hydrogen to produce carbohydrates. Energy is stored in the high energy bonds of an adenosine triphosphate or also abbreviated as ATP. Herbivores obtain their energy by consuming plants or plant products. Carnivores eat herbivores and detritivores consume the droppings and carcasses of us all. Now we will discuss the laws of limiting factors. The laws of limiting factors are as seen on the screen. First is Liebig's law of the minimum. Second is Salford's law of tolerance. Third one is regulatory factors. Next is ecological indicators. Let's start with Liebig's law of the minimum. Liebig's law of the minimum, often simply called Liebig's law or the law of the minimum, is a principle developed in agricultural science by Carl Springer in 1828 and later popularized by Justus von Liebig. It states that growth is controlled not by total amount of resources available but by the scarcity resources, that is limiting factor. Applications. This concept was originally applied to plant or crop growth. where it was found that increasing the amount of plentiful nutrients did not increase plant growth. Only by increasing the amount of limiting nutrient was the growth of a plant or crop improved. This principle can be summed up in the aphorism, the availability of the most abundant nutrient in the soil is only as good as the availability of the least abundant nutrient in the soil. Liebig's law has been extended to the biological population and is commonly used in ecosystem models. For example, the growth of an organism such as plant may be dependent on a number of different factors such as sunlight or mineral nutrients. The availability of this may vary, such that at any given time one is more limiting than the others. Liebig's law states that growth only occurs at the rate permitted by the most limiting. Let us see the example. Dobnex used the image of a barrel, often called Liebig's barrel, to explain Liebig's law. Just as the capacity of a barrel with staves of an unequal length is limited by the shortest stave, so a plant's growth is limited by the nutrient in shortest supply. Next is Salford's law of tolerance. Salford's law of tolerance is probably the more accurate reflections of natural complexity. It holds that first the presence and then the success of an organism depend on the completeness of a complex of the conditions. The absence or failure of an organism then is a function of qualitative or quantitative deficiency or excess with respect to any one of several factors approaching that organism's limit of tolerance for it. More precisely, each organism, whether the individual or the species population, is subject to an ecological minimum, maximum and optimum for any specific environmental factor or complex of factors. The range from minimum to maximum represents the limit of tolerance for the factors or complex. Significantly, if all non-factors are apparently within their respective ranges for the subject organism and yet it fails, it is necessary to consider additional factors or a more complete array of interrelationships including interactions with the other organisms. When faced with any such situation, it is essential to remember yet another caveat: a biological reality has to be taken seriously. Studies in the intact ecosystem must accompany experimental laboratory studies which of necessity isolate individuals from their population and communities. Put another way, it is essential for field biologists to consider the wisdom to be discovered in the laboratory and for biologists ordinarily bound to the laboratory to be aware of the ecological reality associated with the process they are investigating. There are significant corollaries to the laws of tolerance. An organism may have a wide range of tolerance for one factor but a narrow range for another. Logic suggests that organisms with wide ranges of tolerance for many, if not at all, factors will be most widely distributed. Within an organism or species, when conditions are non-optimum for one factor, limits of tolerance for others may be narrowed. Tolerance is most likely to be limited during periods of reproduction. Evolution of narrow limits constitutes one form of specialization and reflects greater efficiency, but it does so at the expense of adaptability. These are the kinds of factors that contribute to increased diversity in the community as a whole. Third one is regulatory factor. In population ecology, a regulating factor is something that keeps a population at equilibrium, means neither increasing nor decreasing in size over time. An example of regulating factor would be food supply. If the population increases to a certain size, there will be less food for each organism. This will lead to fewer births. It means a decreased fecundity and more deaths, making a negative growth rate. As there are now fewer animals, the amount of food for each organism will increase, meaning the growth rate will become positive. This would lead to a large population size again, and the cycle would start over. Therefore, food is a regulating factor in this scenario, as food supply keeps the population at relative equilibrium. All regulating factors are density dependent, meaning they keep population at equilibrium by counteracting fluctuations in population size. Other regulating factors of the human population at present are drinking water supply, amount of arable land, obviously a more fundamental term for food, air pollution and prevalence of communicable disease. The major regulating factor for the human population in current times is inadequacy of safe drinking water, since waterborne diseases is the principal environmental causes of mortality. Next is ecological indicators. Ecosystems are controlled by a multitude of factors, each influencing the other. Almost all living organisms rely on the energy from the sun. Organisms at the base of the food chain, such as phytoplankton and plants, use the sun's energy directly. Organisms higher on the food chain receive energy from the sun indirectly. The only organism on the planet capable of producing energy without the sun are microorganisms called chemoautotrophs that often live near deep sea vents and synthesize energy through a chemical process. Within an ecosystem, there are trophic levels based on feeding relationships, including producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers and decomposers. Many organisms consume both plants as well animals and prey on a variety of species to avoid starvation in case their primary prey becomes scarce. Therefore, they are sometimes categorized into more than one trophic level depending on the circumstances. Abiotic factors like temperature, light, nutrients and salinity play a large part in the control of growth, location and abundance of marine populations. Lastly, species within a population are also regulated by competitions, predation, parasitisms and disease. Every part of complex web of abiotic and abiotic factors fits together to make a system what is balanced and capable of withstanding most changes. Let us summarize the lecture. In this lecture, we discussed about concept of ecosystem. Ecosystems are made up of abiotic and biotic components, and these basic components are important to nearly all types of ecosystems. Later we discussed about laws of limiting factors such as Liebig's law of the minimum, Selford's law of tolerance, regulatory factors for ecosystem and ecological indicators that control abiotic system. Thank you.